Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of KRAD COVID Readings. I'm Keith R.A. DeCandido, trying to make your pandemic palatable. My second story this week is another one that is not yet published, but should be out in the spring of 2021. You might recall a story I read earlier in this reading series called Mater Familias, which was a story featuring Yolanda Rodriguez, a supernatural hunter for hire, and her two daughters, that appeared in Badass Moms, which came out from Crazy 8 Press in 2020. I wrote another Yolanda story for an anthology called Horns and Halos, which will be out from eSpec Books again in the spring of 2021. The book was successfully kickstarted as part of a larger group of books that were crowdfunded, and the anthology is being put together right now by eSpec Books, and like I said, should be out sometime in the early part of the new year if all goes well. So this is another story featuring Yolanda as well as her daughters Analia and Camila as they fight supernatural thingies. Anyway, the story is called Unguarded. The theme of Horns and Halos is angels and demons, and I decided to go with angels. So here it is. Unguarded by Keith R.A. DeCandido. Mommy, I think I may have a client for you at school. Yolanda Rodriguez blinked in surprise at her 15-year-old daughter, Camila. They had just sat down to dinner. Camila's older sister, Analia, had made pork chops, and Yolanda had been about to compliment one daughter on her cooking when the other one hit her with that particular bombshell. You haven't been telling anyone at school about what Yolanda started. But that just got Camila to look at her with annoyance from over the top of her plastic-framed glasses. Mommy, come on. Do I look stupid? Her youngest, Eduardo, who was 8, looked up and said, "Can I answer that?" "Don't even think about it," Camila said to Eduardo, then looked back at her mother. "My friend Haroon, I think he's been cursed." Yolanda chewed her pork chop thoughtfully. If anyone else had said this, she wouldn't have taken it seriously, but Camila knew more about the supernatural and the weird and the magical than most of Yolanda's fellow coursers. "What signs have you seen?" Yolanda asked. Before she could answer, Yolanda's husband, Carlos, asked, "Wait, isn't that the boy who beat you out for best GPA last year?" Quietly, Camila said, "Yeah." "So this isn't just you wanting revenge?" Carlos asked with a big smile. "No, Haroon's a good guy, really." Camila shook her head. "He's smart and funny, and he's on the basketball team. He even made varsity, even though he's only a sophomore." "So what happened?" Yolanda asked. "Everything's going wrong. He made 6 fouls in 2 minutes in last night's basketball game, and he missed every shot he tried to make. Then today he tripped over his own 2 feet and banged his head on the locker, so he can't play anyhow because he also sprained his ankle. And then in math class he got all the answers wrong. He never gets the answers wrong in math." "Maybe he just got all stressed out because of the ankle," Analia said. Camila almost pouted. "It's not just that. He doesn't get stressed out. Last year his grandmother died and he still played basketball, still got everything right in class, and he never fell down. I really think he's got a curse on him." "How long has this been going on?" Yolanda asked. "Couple days?" Yolanda sighed. "Tell you what, Camila, give it another couple days, just to be sure." "But," Camila started, but Yolanda cut her off. "Camila, we don't know for sure that this is a curse. You find any hex bags or symbols in his locker or his bags?" Not yet." Torn between pride and concern over Camila's use of the word "yet" there, Yolanda then asked, "And do we have a client?" Camila looked down at her food. "No." "Right. This is a job, remember? Unless someone's paying for a courser, ain't nothing we can do, all right?" "Yes, Mommy." But Camila did not sound happy about it. Later that night, Yolanda and Carlos were getting ready for bed. Carlos had taken off his prosthetic leg and was lying down while Yolanda was changing into her nightshirt and making sure their pet dragon, Magellan, had enough water in his dish. "You sure you weren't too hard on Camila, Lala?" Yolanda sighed. She knew it was true love with Carlos because she let him call her that without punching him repeatedly in the throat. "You think I was?" "If it was Analia or Eduardo saying it, I'd be right there with you, but Camila knows from curses." Nodding, Yolanda pet Magellan once on the head. The dragon said, "Crew!" breathed out a tiny bit of smoke, and then settled down to sleep. Then she moved toward her side of the bed. "Yeah, she does, but we still ain't got a client. Besides, it could be a curse. But it could also be a kid having a bad couple days. And it's not like I can go wandering around the school without cause. Why not? You used to teach there, Carlos said with a cheeky grin. Yeah, and they just love it when former volleyball coaches go around poking into students' lives for no good reason. Carlos chuckled, and then his face grew serious. Oh, yeah, speaking of clients, Jake finally called me back. Accounting screwed up again, so I won't get the payment until next week. Yolanda sighed as she crawled under the covers. Damn it! And the full moon ain't for 2 weeks. The night of the full moon was almost always a busy one for coursers because there was always some manner of phenomenon that needed a supernatural hunter for hire like her to deal with. Ever since a Wendigo chewed off Carlos's leg, the incident that led to Yolanda taking on the job of courser, he'd been working as a freelance comic book artist. Unfortunately, that publisher's accounting department had never been reliable. When he first started working for them, they couldn't get cut checks right. Now they couldn't get a simple wire transfer to go smoothly. At least Yolanda still had her job at the CrossFit place, which, along with Carlos's disability, brought in some regular income. But with 3 kids, that was never enough. She drifted off to sleep, her dreams filled with images of zeroed-out bank accounts and empty plates on their dinner table. The next day, Yolanda put in a full shift at Pinehurst CrossFit. She spent all morning and afternoon helping people get into shape on the storefront workout joint on 181st Street, a couple of blocks from their apartment in the Washington Heights neighborhood of Upper Manhattan. By 3 p.m., she had finished with a pair of clients and headed to the small office she had been given. As she went, Shaniqua, half of the couple who owned the place, said, "Yo, you got somebody waiting for you." "Thanks." That was probably a coarser client. Ever since she'd gotten rid of a leprechaun infestation at Pinehurst, Shaniqua and her wife Deanna had allowed Yolanda not only to continue working for them, but to use her office as an unofficial home base for her courser work. Sitting in the guest chair of her tiny office was a tall, skinny man wearing a turban and a long linen tunic over loose linen pants, all of which were light brown. After a moment, she recognized him. He rose to his feet as she entered. "You are Ms. Rodriguez." "Yeah, I'm Yolanda Rodriguez." "I am Thara Uden. I am hoping you might be able to assist me." As Yolanda sat in her chair, the springs squeaked a bit. Uden retook his seat more silently. "You're the imam at the mosque over on St. Nicholas, right?" Uden nodded. "Indeed. I have been tasked with a very important mission, but I am afraid that the means to complete the task are beyond my abilities. I understand, Ms. Rodriguez, that you are a courser, yes? Who tasked you with this mission, if you don't mind me asking?" "The Hafaja. They are the guards of Allah's people, and all who are dedicated to Islam have 4 such assigned to them to protect them until they have reached their appointed time." Uden shook his head. "My apologies. As a courser, I'm sure you know all this." In fact, Yolanda hadn't. She had a great deal of trouble keeping track of all the different magical beings in the world. Camilla usually backstopped her on that stuff, but there was no need for Uden to know that, so she just nodded and said, "It's okay, go on." "The issue is with the 4 Hafaja, who are assigned to a young man named Harun Ayad." Unable to help herself, Yolanda smiled. "Something amuses you?" Uden asked tightly. He sat up straighter in the guest chair, his entire body tensing. He obviously thought this was no laughing matter. "It depends. Is Harun Ayad a sophomore at Cardinal Marini High School?" "Yes. How did you know that?" "I used to teach at Marini, and both my daughters go there. Harun's friends with my younger daughter, Camila." "Ah, I see. What's the problem with Harun's Hafaja?" "They have been blocked from performing their duties." Suddenly, Yolanda felt really bad about how dismissive she had been of Camila at dinner the night before. If Harun had 4 guardians protecting him, and they were suddenly yanked away, that could make it look like he was cursed. Although the fact that Harun was obviously a devout Muslim raised another question. "If you don't mind my asking, Mr. Uden, why is Harun attending a Catholic school?" Uden gave a small smile. "I don't mind at all, Ms. Rodriguez. Harun's father is Muslim, but his mother is Catholic. That must have been a fun wedding." "I could not say, as the nuptials occurred before I came to New York. But nonetheless, both Harun and his father are regular attendees at our mosque. However, his mother is an alumna of Cardinal Marini." Yolanda nodded in understanding. Children of alumni and present and past faculty got a tuition discount at Marini, which is part of why Yolanda and Carlos sent their daughters there, and likely also this true of the Ayad family. "Okay, what else have the Hafaja told you?" At that, Uden hesitated. Very little, I'm afraid. The guards do not commune directly. I was told by a colleague that coursers had means of doing so. We do, yeah. It was going to mean a trip up to Katha's shop on Vermilier and 207th Street, though the cost of the amulet she'd need could be added to the imam's bill. I need to assemble some materials. Can we meet at your mosque tomorrow? Absolutely. You may come by Ater Salah. Say 2:30? Great. Now we got to talk about my fee. After discussing remuneration with the imam, Yolanda finished her day at Pinehurst. Around 6, she picked up Eduardo from his after-school facility and walked him home, then told everyone of their new client over dinner. So he was cursed, Camila said triumphantly. Yolanda pointed a finger at her daughter. Maybe. I'm going to talk directly to the Hafaja tomorrow. Got to head uptown first and get me a Perron amulet. Analia said, say hi to Katha for me. At the same time that Camila said, you can't use a Perron. Making a mental note to give Katha Patel regards from her older daughter, Yolanda replied to her younger one. Why can't I use a Perron? It's for summoning angels, right? And the Hafaja are basically guardian angels. But Camila was shaking her head. Perrons are just for summoning Christian angels. It won't work for Hafaja or for a Zoroastrian angel or a Sheik angel either. You need a Knudsen stone. That's for summoning any kind of godly messenger or servant. Yolanda sighed. She seemed to recall that a Knudsen stone cost about twice as much as a Perron amulet. She hoped she had enough in the account to cover it. While the imam would reimburse her once the job was over, she still needed to front the cash for the thing. All right, thanks, Camila. See what else you can dig up about Hafaja tonight after you get your homework done. I'll do it right after dinner, Camila said with a smile. Yolanda shook her head. Of course, Camila already had her homework done before dinner. After bringing her checking account dangerously low to purchase the Knudsen stone, as well as a new silver stick, the last one had fallen down a sewer drain, Yolanda headed to the mosque on St. Nicholas Avenue and 175th Street. As she entered the surprisingly small space, it was on the ground floor of an apartment building across the street from a much more ostentatious Roman Catholic church, she saw several men standing on the brightly colored and intricately patterned red and gold carpet. Udin stood at the center of the group, today wearing darker brown. Most of the other men were also dressed in long tunics and loose pants, though they all wore simple white caps instead of turbans. Udin approached her and gave a small bow. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome, Ms. Rodriguez. Sorry, I butchered the pronunciation of that. Although she wasn't Muslim, Yolanda thought it was only polite to give the appropriate response. Walaikum salam. I'm ready to summon the Hafaja, but, why the audience? Forgive the indulgence, but many of the brothers wish to witness this great event. Yeah, okay. She bit back a retort asking if any sisters were invited, reminding herself that the client was always right. Yolanda reached into her purse and rummaged around to try to find the small bag containing the Knudsen and its accessories, which she finally located underneath her cell phone and a vial of holy water. First, she placed the small handkerchief on the floor of the mosque, then put the Knudsen stone atop it. One of the men standing with Udin asked, "What is the cloth for?" Yolanda grinned as she unscrewed the bottle of planetary oil. "To keep your carpet clean." Then she poured the oil onto the stone and said, "Yag Kalar Harun Ayad, Vak Mashtare, Yag Kalar Allah Janare." I know I mispronounced that. I apologize. The stone started to sparkle with a mild blue glow. A bright light seemed to come from nowhere, bathing the room in incandescence. Yolanda held up her arm over her face and blinked spots out of her eyes, even as the light dimmed as fast as it had brightened. Standing in a circle around the stone were 4 forms. 2 were dark red and shimmering with what seemed to be fire. Yolanda saw smoke wisp off them. The other 2 were a pale white, and she saw condensation wisp just like the smoke off the first 2. All 4 faced in the same direction, not looking directly at Yolanda or at anyone else in the room. One of the fiery ones spoke first, with a harsh voice, like a truck driving over broken glass. "You who summoned us, are you who was promised by the scholar of this structure?" Assuming you mean Mr. Udin, then yeah, I'm Yolanda Rodriguez. I understand that... One of the 2 icy ones spoke in a quiet tone, like snow falling. "We are the guardians of the one who is dedicated to Allah." The other icy one added in a louder, more intense manner that sounded like wood cracking. "We have been denied our task." "You will fix this," the second fiery one said, and that one's voice was whispery and faded. Belatedly, Yolanda realized that all four angels faced southeast, the direction of Mecca. "I'll do my best, but I gotta know how you're being stopped from protecting Harun." "Your question is meaningless," the second icy one said. The second fiery one repeated, "You will fix this." "I don't know what this is yet." Yolanda sighed. "What happens when you try to protect Harun?" "We are unable to do so." The second fiery one was starting to sound angry. The first fiery one said, "She is not a child of Allah. She must be instructed." "Our task," the first icy one, who had the nicest voice, so Yolanda was grateful that she got to give the lecture, said, "is to guard the child of Allah. In time of day, my sister and I guard him. I in the front, she behind. At night, our brothers take over. But 3 days ago, all attempts were stymied. We could not guard him, could not approach his personage, could not do anything. In anguish, we came to the scholar of this structure, and he came to you." "You will fix this," the second fiery one cried, and Yolanda felt the mosque shake. Udin exchanged nervous glances with his comrades. All of them were openly gaping at the presence of the Hafaja in their midst. "Like I said, I'll do my best. One more question. You said this started 3 days ago?" The first fiery one said, "When my brother and I were to take our turns 3 days past, we were denied, and all attempts to fulfill our function have failed." "We must serve our purpose," the second icy one said. "The child of Allah may visit a fate not his own if we cannot act." Now that she had a specific time frame, it gave Yolanda something to work with. "If it's okay, I'll look into this and summon you again tomorrow." "There is no need for further summonings," the first fiery one said. The second icy one added, "It wastes effort and serves no further function, and we find it cumbersome." "You will fix this," the second fiery one bellowed. "For the third time, I'll do my best. Yag Slapper, dig." With those last 3 words, the 4 guardians faded, and the Knudsen stone's sparkly glow did likewise. The gathered men were still gaping now, and were talking amongst themselves in what Yolanda thought was Arabic. Udin, however, didn't join the gabfest and instead came over to her. "Do you now have a course of action, Ms. Rodriguez?" "I think so, yeah, but I need to talk to the Ayads. Can you take me to their home?" "Now?" Udin asked hesitantly. Recalling that Harun was in school with Camila right now and his parents probably both worked, Yolanda said, "No, tonight, once everyone's home." Udin removed a smartphone from one of the pockets of his tunic and then recited an address on 184th Street. "I will meet you there this evening at 7:30. Yolanda wasn't thrilled at the imam inviting himself along, but he was the client, and besides, his presence might put the family at ease. That night, Yolanda gathered up Camila and Magellan and headed to 184th Street. Analia had also wanted to go with them, but she had to help teach a karate class. "I can get out of it," she'd said. Having recently achieved her junior black belt, Analia often accompanied Yolanda on jobs for extra muscle. "It's fine," Yolanda had replied. "This probably won't be dangerous. And if it is, I got Magellan." Camila did not usually accompany Yolanda on her jobs, as her specialty was lore and research, but Harun was her friend, and Yolanda thought having her around would make them both happy. As for Magellan, the small green dragon had followed Yolanda home from a job years ago, and Analia and Camila had insisted she keep him. Eduardo was still a baby at the time, though as he got older, he was very confused as to why none of his friends had pet dragons. Yolanda had named him after the dragon in Eureka's Castle, one of her favorite shows from when she was a girl. He'd proven handy on more than one job. Right now, he was curled up inside Yolanda's purse, fast asleep, away from prying eyes. They were buzzed into the large apartment building on 184th, and then took the rickety old elevator up to the 7th floor and the Ayad apartment. Udin was standing in the doorway when they exited the elevator. "Welcome, Ms. Rodriguez." "Thanks, Mr. Udin." He led them into a very cluttered hallway filled with short bookcases stuffed with books and magazines. To Yolanda's right was the kitchen, and on the left were 3 closed doors. The far end of the hallway opened into a large living room, which had an entryway to a dining room that also had its own door to the kitchen. Yolanda suspected that Harun had spent a lot of time running around in circles in this place, especially when he was Eduardo's age. The living room walls were also covered in bookcases, aside from one wall that had exposed brick, and they had hung pretty works of art on it. Seated on the couch that was against the brick were a dark-skinned man in a polo shirt and slacks, and a pale red-headed woman in a flower-print sundress, and a very tall young teenage boy with coffee-colored skin wearing a Spider-Man t-shirt and jeans. He was barefoot and had an ace bandage wrapped around one foot. Yolanda assumed that was the ankle he had sprained. There was also a square-shaped bandage on his forehead. As soon as they walked into the living room, the boy brightened. "Hey, Camila." "Hi, Haroon. My mommy's here, and she's going to fix everything." Yolanda winced. "Well, I'm going to try anyhow." The two parents stood up. You're the courser?" the man asked. Nodding, she held out a hand. "Yolanda Rodriguez, and that's my daughter, Camila." "I'm Zaki Ayad," the man said, returning the handshake. "This is my wife, Siobhan." The redhead also shook her hand. "A pleasure. I have to ask, what is a courser, exactly?" Yolanda chuckled. She got this a lot. We've been called a lot of things, but we're basically supernatural hunters for hire. I don't really get the name myself. I just do the job, you know?" Camila said, "It's actually an old hunting term from the 17th century. It originally referred to hunters who worked by sight instead of by scent." Haroon laughed. "Don't get her started, Mom. Camila's like a walking Wikipedia." That got Camila to peer at Haroon over her glasses, and Yolanda was amused to see that she wasn't the only one who received that doleful look. "I'm better than Wikipedia, thank you very much." Siobhan, however, looked dubious to say the least. So did Zaki, and they both shot a glance at the imam. He nodded, and they both nodded and sat back down. Yolanda blew out a breath. The biggest impediment in her job was dealing with people who didn't believe that what she did was real. Hell, until the Wendigo chopped off her husband's leg, she hadn't believed that what she did now was real. The living room also had a love seat, an easy chair, and a rocker. Haroon joined Camila on the love seat, while Yolanda sat on the rocker, gently setting down her purse so as not to disturb Magellan. Udin remained standing. "I got to talk to your Hafaja," Yolanda said to Haroon. "They said that you spoke to them." Siobhan was rolling her eyes now. "Oh, come on." Zaki put a hand on her thigh. "Sweetie, please." "He's just had a couple of bad days. It happens." "Please, Ms. Ayad," Udin said. "Trust in Allah." "I respect that all three of you, trust in him," Siobhan said, "but I don't." "Just hear Ms. Rodriguez out?" Zaki asked. "Please?" He was now staring at his wife with wide brown eyes. Siobhan let out a very long breath. "Fine." Yolanda had been tempted to let Magellan out of the purse, just to see her reaction, but it was best to keep the dragon in reserve. Instead, she looked back at Haroon. "Your Hafaja said that they stopped being able to protect you last Sunday, around sunset." Haroon said, "That was dinner time. Aunt Maureen came over." Siobhan added, "Maureen's my sister. She found a few things in my mother's house when she was cleaning it out, and she brought them by and stayed for dinner." Yolanda recalled Camila mentioning that Haroon's grandmother had died. "I'm sorry for your loss." "Thank you. Did any of the things Maureen found go to Haroon?" Haroon said, "I took that pretty coin." Reaching into the pocket of his jeans, he took out a dark coin, which looked like it was made of copper, with a bright shape engraved on it in what looked like gold. Camila stared at it. "Can I see that?" Shrugging, Haroon said, "Sure. I just took it because it reminds me of Grandma. She always carried that coin around, said it kept her safe." After turning the coin over in her hands, Camila looked over at Yolanda. "That's a Jerusalem cross." She held it up, and Yolanda saw that the engraving was a Greek cross, which meant it was even on all sides instead of looking like a lowercase letter T the way a lot of crosses did. And there were 4 more crosses, one in each corner of the big cross. Siobhan added, "Ma always said that the coin was for her guardian angel." Suddenly, Yolanda got a very queasy feeling. She reached into her purse and pulled out the Knudsen stone. That disturbed Magellan, and he flew out into the living room. "What is that?" "That's Magellan," Camila said in her best teenager duh voice. "He's our dragon," Yolanda said, "and don't worry, he ain't gonna hurt you." Magellan flew lazily around the living room. Haroon was staring wide-eyed at him, while Siobhan and Zaki looked like they were trying to crawl into the couch. Udin, though, was apparently more interested in the Knudsen. "The Hafaja said that they were blocked from even being near Haroon. You will not be able to summon them here." Yolanda smiled. "They're not who I'm summoning." She placed the cloth on the hardwood floor of the living room, then put the stone on top of it. As she poured more of the planetary oil onto the stone, she said, "Yag Kalar Haroon Ayad Vakmashtare. Yag Kalar Yahweh Janare." As the stone started to gain a sparkly blue glow, she said, "Everyone cover your eyes for a minute." Another bright light, which dimmed, and then a glowing figure appeared in the center of the room. It had no discernible features and only a basic human form, but made up entirely of light. Yolanda had to admit to being disappointed at the lack of wings. The form seemed to turn and face Yolanda. "Why have you brought me here?" "You're the guardian angel attached to that coin, right?" Yolanda pointed at the coin in Camilla's hand. "The bearer of that talisman is entitled to my protection only if that bearer is of the faith." And there's the problem. Harun ain't of the faith. He's Muslim. "Then he is not entitled to my protection." "Yeah, but you're blocking him from the protection he gets from his guardian angels." "Your words are meaningless to me. The talisman must be given to one of the faith. Now release me, mortal, that I may return to my duties." The angel started moving toward Yolanda, but Magellan interpolated himself between them. Smoke issued from his nostrils as he said, "Bleh!" It started getting very hot in the apartment, and the angel's glow intensified. "I've no wish to harm you, but if you do not release me..." Yolanda had everything she needed anyhow. "Yag slopper dig." The angel disappeared, and the stone's glow faded. "What the hell was that?" Siobhan was almost hyperventilating. "Your mother's guardian angel, looks like," Yolanda said. "You said she carried that coin everywhere, right?" "Well, she said it gave her luck, but..." Siobhan shook her head and got up from the couch, pacing across the front of it. "This is crazy. She didn't have a guardian angel." I know you don't believe in this stuff, but I just..." Waving her arms back and forth, Siobhan interrupted Yolanda. "No, forget that. I'm talking about Ma. Her life sucked. How could she have a guardian angel?" Udin stepped forward. "I can only speak to how the Hafaja behave, Ms. Ayad, but I suspect that the Christian guardians are similar. They do not protect from all harm, but rather keep them from harm that is not part of their fate as preordained by Allah." He smiled and bowed his head. "Or in your case, by Yahweh." Yolanda said, "But what's happening here is that the coin is keeping Harun's Hafaja from doing their jobs of protecting him, and the angel attached to the coin also ain't protecting him, which is why he's been such a mess. It's like getting the opposite of being protected, and twice as much." Zaki asked, "So what do we do?" "Duh, Dad," Harun said. "I don't keep the stupid coin. You can have it, Camilla." "Actually," Yolanda said, "I think Siobhan should have it." "I haven't set foot inside a church in 20 years, Ms. Rodriguez," Siobhan said, "and I'm not about to start now." She smiled. "But my sister has. I'll give it to Maureen." "That should solve the problem," Yolanda said. Magellan, meanwhile, had landed on Camilla's lap, and Harun was now petting him. "He's great!" Udin walked up to Yolanda and offered a hand. "Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez. I believe that you have brought peace to this family." "I don't know if I'd go that far," Siobhan said. "You just turned my entire world upside down with a stone and some oil. It's going to take me a while to be okay with that." Zaki stood up and put a hand on his wife's shoulder. "Harun should be safe now. That's what matters." Siobhan smiled and put one of her hands on his. "That's definitely true." Yolanda said to Udin, "I'll email you an invoice." Before the imam could respond, Zaki said, "No, email it to us. You helped us out. We should pay for the service." "The mosque is happy to," Udin started. "No, Zaki's right," Siobhan said. "He's our son, our responsibility. Thank you both for your help." "My pleasure." Yolanda and Siobhan exchanged email addresses. Then she turned to her daughter. "Okay, Camilla, we should..." But then she saw that Harun and Camilla and Magellan were all goofing off on the love seat. Turning back to Zaki and Siobhan, Yolanda said, "Maybe Camilla and Magellan can stay for a while?" "I think Harun would love that," Siobhan said. "We were going to order pizza for dinner. You can all stay if you want." "I must return to the mosque," Udin said. Yolanda smiled. "I should get home too. Camilla, can you get yourself and Magellan home on your own? Yeah?" Camilla just peered at her from over her glasses. "Mommy." That's what I thought. That will be appearing, as I said, in Horns and Halos. If you go to eSpecBooks.com and then click on the link for their Square store, you can pre-order the book directly from eSpec, either the ebook edition or the trade paperback edition. And it'll be on sale, like I said, in the spring. Once we get closer to the pub date, there will be ordering links on all the other online sources: Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, whatever, iTunes. And as I said, you can order it directly from the publisher as well right now. So keep an eye out on my website, which is DeCandido.net, or my blog, DeCandido.wordpress.com, for updates on Horns and Halos as soon as they become available, and just read it generally because it's got cool stuff. And if you want to support me on Patreon, that would be great. It's patreon.com/KRAD. There's TV reviews, movie reviews, excerpts from works in progress, first looks at first drafts, vignettes featuring my original characters, and all sorts of other cool stuff. You're going to love it. Just so you know, excuse me, this is the last week of KRAD COVID readings, at least for a while. I'm going to be taking the rest of the year off. I'm running out of short stories, and I'm not sure if I'm going to continue this or not. I'll have more about that on Friday. But thank you all for watching and for listening, and I'll see you Friday. Please stay safe.